What have your pets done that is worryingly smart? I had a cat that learned how to open the fridge, and then my dog started begging my cat for food, and then the cat started getting into the fridge just to feed the dog. I patiently await the day where my pets decide to overthrow me and have me fixed. I'm not fighting it. That'll only make it worse in the long run. Had him for about 3 months and my dog didn't like him. To be fair, my dog didn't like anybody that wasn't me or food. Husband's dog wasn't too interested in him either. Anyways, so one day the cat got up onto the counter and found some leftover chicken. Does he eat the chicken? Nope. He knocks a piece off the counter, watches it fall down, my dog taking it and walking to the carpet to eat it. Second dog comes up, tosses another piece off. Dog goes to the carpet. First dog comes back for the next piece, until all the chicken was gone. Didn't eat a single piece himself. Freak occurrence? Nope. Cleaning lady kicked the dogs outside to mop. Their hooves were inside. Cat brings the dog a hoof. My dog runs off with his hoof. Second dog waits for him, picks it up, spits it back out, and waits. Cat runs back inside, grabs another hoof, and takes it to him. Dogs doesn't want that either. Goes back to fetch a third hoof. Dog finally accepts that one and runs off. Cat goes back to lying on the bookshelf. Here's a bonus story about my cat. I have this red lighter, and I've had it for almost 4 years now. It's one of my most prized possessions because, come on, it's a lighter that lasted almost 4 years. After my dog passed away, we got a new friend for the second dog. This new friend liked to steal things and eat them. She got hold of this red lighter and it was gone. A week later, in the middle of the night, the cat jumps onto the bed and tries to wake me up. I can hear there's something in his mouth. Very unlike him in being 3 a.m., I wanted nothing to do with him, so I shoot him away. Husband happened to be awake. Cat goes to him, smacks his leg to get his attention, and drops my red lighter on the floor at his feet. -1 piece. It's all good. Husband rewards the cat with scratches and a treat. A few hours later, he came back with another lighter, one which was not mine. I don't know where he found it, but he brought it to me too. Sometimes animals are more bros than humans. Story 2. I would do the old trick when my cat yawns to stick my finger in his mouth. Don't know why I do it. I guess it's just funny to see his expression when, boom, suddenly finger. So the other day he's sitting on my lap and I yawn. He wakes up and does a stretch, perfectly putting his paw in my mouth. Boom, suddenly paw. Still no idea if by accident or if planned. His smug expression afterwards makes me lean towards the latter. My dog did this, and it was definitely deliberate. It was a very sweet, incredibly well-behaved, slightly nervous dog because he'd been through a lot with his past owner before we got him. He would rather die than misbehave. Anyway, I used to have him sleep on my bed right up beside me when I was a little kid. When he was getting sleepy, he'd yawn a lot. And because he had dog breath, I'd always put my hand on his snout to close his mouth. One day I was lying there facing him, looking at how cute he was. I started yawning, and then bam, he'd suddenly stuck his whole foot in my mouth out of nowhere. The look in his eyes also left me with no doubts that it was deliberate. He also pissed on someone who was staying at our house who'd been teasing him. He was my parents' friend's poophead kid. They were camping out on the floor in our living room. In the middle of the night, our dog, again, the most well-behaved dog in the world who would hold it in all day rather than pee in the house, crept into the living room, quietly stepped across all the other sleeping people in the room until he got to this kid, and then cocked his leg on his head. Best dog ever. Story 3. Back when I was a kid, my family had an incredibly intelligent Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. She had somehow managed to learn several dozen different words, to the point where we could tell her to go find certain people to wait for us in certain rooms, or to pick out specific items from her collection of about 15 different toys. This dog would even obey remarkably detailed commands combining those elements, like, go get your hedgehog, then bring it to Dad in his office. Suffice to say, she was a damned remarkable pet. Now, this dog's favorite toy was a little stuffed animal that was vaguely shaped like a human, which we referred to as her baby. She would wrestle with it, tote it around the house, and keep it right next to her whenever the family would gather to watch a movie or something. After a year or so of such adventures, though, the toy started to get a little bit worn out, so my mother decided to replace it. In an effort to surprise the dog, she discreetly put the old baby in the garbage, then stood in the middle of the living room with a new one behind her back. "Coyote," my mother called. The dog's name was Coyote, though we pronounced every letter. "Coyote, come here." As expected, the dog came bounding into the room, a happy spring in her step. "Where's your baby? Go get your baby." Everyone expected the dog to approach the corner where her toys were kept, discover the item was missing, then mount a search for it. She'd done similar things in the past, after all, with hide-and-seek being one of the many games she seemingly enjoyed. But rather than behaving as anticipated, Coyote trotted over to the trash compactor and started pressing on its foot pedal with her paws. She wasn't heavy enough to get the thing open, but the intention was clear enough. In the end, Coyote wound up with 2 babies. Story 4. My dog, let's call her A, had a dog friend who was dumb as a brick. Let's call him B. When B's owners were out of town, he'd stay with us. A was a bit spoiled and had lots of bones and toys she never touched unless B wanted to have them. One day when A was checking out who was cooking in the kitchen and if she could snag some food, B got a hold of one of her bones. B was a large dog, and once he had something, he wasn't giving it up. A was fairly big herself, but she didn't compare to B. So A comes out of the kitchen and realizes that B has her bone that she hasn't touched in months and is having none of it. She knows from past experiences that you can't just snag the bone away from B. So she grabs a tennis ball and sneaks up behind him and drops it on his head. B stares up at the ceiling for about 3 minutes trying to figure out what's happening, and A snags the bone and hides it. B looks down and sees that the bone is gone and then stares at the ceiling for another 5 minutes trying to figure out how it took his bone. Rest in peace, A. You were an amazing dog. I'm very confused by your choice to maintain the anonymity of the dogs. Story 5. Not my pet, but I found a dog on the side of the road once, took it in, tried to find its owner. It had a chip, so the local shelter reached out to him for me. Didn't hear from him immediately, so I let this dog stay with me. When I took him to the shelter, they recognized him right off the bat, said he had been in before, full-bred Australian Shepherd. Super sweet. Get along well with my cat, no accidents in the house, clearly well-trained. 2 days later, I go to work. Still no word from the owner. Let the dog roam free in the house during the day since he seemed so well-behaved. Boyfriend comes home midday. The dog and my cat are sitting outside the front yard. All doors are shut and locked. My boyfriend, very confused, calls me wondering how the hell both animals are outside. Our first thought is that someone broke in. He goes inside and notices the window on the side of the house as the window slid up and the screen pushed out. We heard from the owner the next day. Finally, he'd been out of town. I met up with him to give him the dog. Explained to him what happened with the window. He said, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time. He knows how to open windows." Story 6. Well, there was the rat that learned how to run on his hind legs, or how he kept tricking people by looking cute and cuddly until they went within biting range, at which point he'd drop the facade and strike them. He also was able to understand locks and levers and similar physics. And if he didn't get the food he wanted or the treatment he wanted, he would threaten us, menacingly moving towards us as if to bite. He would also communicate to us when he wanted something. If the water bottle was empty, he would go to it and start sneezing and rattling the bars. If the cage needed cleaning, he'd get our attention and start sneezing deliberately. We used to call him doing this letters to the editor, as it was always done with the rage of the type of person who writes into Sunday newspaper about issues of the day. He had a human presence and personality, to the degree that his resting expression looked more like the face of a human than a rat. He changed this when luring someone towards him, and he looked almost unrecognizable. Unfortunately, he hated people, but if you treated him with respect as if he were a human, he liked that. If people cooed over him, he would attack them. He hated being a little furry cute thing, too. He was put to sleep about 9 months ago. Not a day goes by that I don't miss the psychotic little a-hole. Story 7. Oh boy. My working-line German Shepherd female learned to operate paddle handle doors at about 3 months and would let herself out. Afterward, learned to operate a normal doorknob by biting it and twisting it. Within about 25 minutes, learned the trick behind the sliding glass door at my mom's house, bites that handle and pulls it open. Then learned to move the stake that was blocking the door from being open so she could go outside. All doors in my house have to be locked or she will decide to let herself out. Is impervious to the tennis ball and the food trick, because she simply picks up the tennis ball, moves it, and then goes to eat her food as quickly as she wants. Routinely tricks my 10-year-old German Shepherd by barking at the front door. He gets up and runs to the front door. Then she runs and steals his toy. Sometimes tricks me by whining like she has to go out. GSDs are very vocal and you can interpret their whine types after a while. Then when she goes out, simply goes to get her Frisbee toy. Can easily tell when the treats in my hand run out, and will sometimes stop doing her training if she knows I no longer have treats in my hand. When she got sick once and couldn't hold her poop, went inside the bathroom in the house to do it. I couldn't even be mad. Both know my running shoes mean a run and my hiking bag means going on a hike. If you think about it, animals are crazy smart. Well, at least to have companions who truly understand us and love us. Animals are just really genuine. Anyway, I'm pretty sure there are some pets out there that could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Will you let pets beat you to it? Come on, do it. I know you want to. Story 8. My family had a golden retriever when we were teenagers who was one of the smartest dogs I've ever known. She had a very peculiar and adorable way of letting us know that she was pissed at us. As a puppy, she got in trouble a few times for stealing food off our counters. She most often stole a loaf of bagged bread, but quickly learned that stealing bread was a big no-no after a few times. Well, one Saturday, we had to take a day trip somewhere. I think a football tournament? We had only planned on staying a max of 4 hours, so we just left her home knowing that she wouldn't get in any trouble. I can't remember the details, but circumstances forced us to stay at the tournament for the entire day, so our poor dog was left home all day. We felt terrible and raced home as soon as we could. When we got to our house, we couldn't find her. She normally would greet us at the door and go crazy, but this time we were met with nothing. My parents started looking for her, and after a few minutes, I hear my mom laughing from her room. Our dog had grabbed every single loaf of bread sitting on the counter and carried it to their room, gently placing it on the bed for us to find. Every loaf was perfect, save for a little indentation where she had carried it in her mouth. No puncture marks from the plastic wrapping, no missing pieces, just perfect loaves of bread on my parents' bed. Sitting right next to their bed was our dog, with a smug look on her face that said, "You see what I could have done? But I didn't. Don't leave me home alone again." We never left her home alone for that long again, but every once in a while my parents would still find a perfect loaf of bread in their bed. I miss that dog. Story 9. When I get asked to do some things, I'll groan jokingly and do the thing anyway. And when I call my dog while she's sleeping, or if I accidentally nudge her at the foot of the bed, then she groans with an attitude like I would. Kind of adorable, kind of freaky. My dog knows my caller ID. I sometimes need to call home from my cell, and her home phone speaks the incoming call's caller ID. The only time my dog ever howls is when I call and the answering machine says my ID. She's done it when my mom is off somewhere else in the house and can hear the phone ringing. She doesn't do it for any other phone call, even if I'm not home. I also tried calling it while I'm still home to see if I can get her to howl, but she just looks at me like I'm an idiot. My dog also has 2 bowls, one for food and one for water. Whenever I give her some crushed ice to lick in the water bowl, she'll pick up chunks of the ice and put them in the food bowl instead. Apparently, solids equals food bowl, even if said solids turn into water. She learns a lot of things on her own and doesn't really care what I think, which can cause me a lot of headaches, but I wouldn't trade her for anything in the world. Story 10. Not so much worrying as it is somewhat annoying and funny, but my Golden will walk up to the Xbox, look at the Xbox button, boop it with his nose and wait for the light to turn on and the chime to sound, and then just walk away all satisfied looking. For a couple of months, I would come home from work and notice the Xbox was on, but no, I had to turn it off. I accused my fiancé of leaving it on until one day I was in the next room and heard the chime. So I ran in and he was walking away from it. Then he started to get flagrant about it and did it right in front of me, and eventually turned it off if I was playing it and he wanted my attention. Goldens are a trip. One night I had paused a movie on my laptop and fell asleep. He was laying at the bedroom door and could see the movie. He thought we should keep watching, so he snuck onto my bed and hit the space bar. I didn't wake up until a loud fight scene a while in and freaked out. He was just curled up on my bed watching. You'll never know. Maybe he thinks you're the pet and he's in charge. No Xbox and no sleeping when the movie isn't finished. Dog rules. Story 11. Not as much smart, rather worryingly calculated. On Christmas Eve, I was wrapping the cat's favorite treats because I'm that person. The 3 boys weren't too fussed about this, but Amber, the princess, wanted the treats now. Of course, she's a cat and has no concept of Christmas, so I gave her one of her normal treats and put the presents away. She was not amused by this. Now, the thing about Amber is that she never came upstairs. She had tiny little legs that made the journey too long, so she commandeered the downstairs instead. But that night, I was woken up by a weird cat chirping. I opened my eyes, and on the shelf eye level across from me was Amber. I was confused as to A, why she was upstairs, and B, how she got on my shelf. As I was thinking this, whilst maintaining eye contact, she stuck out a paw and swiped one action figure off the shelf. I didn't react at first, so she did another. And another. By the third, I realized what she was doing, and I said her name in shock, to which she hopped off the shelf and left my room like it was nothing. That confirmed my suspicions that Amber held grudges and exact revenge. My other cat systematically tests for weaknesses in my door. He jingles my keys in the wall. He knows that noise gets that door to open. He's finally managed to unlock the deadbolt with his little paw. If that a-hole could turn the doorknob, he'd be gone. My fat cat has devised an alarm system by laying on top of my foot or having his foot touch my foot whenever possible so that when I get up, if he's sleeping, he'll wake up just in case I'm going to feed him. Story 12. My dog is afraid of the smoke alarm. After a while, he discovered the toaster could set the alarm off if toast burned, so he became scared of the toaster. Eventually, he figured out the noise the bread bag made as it preceded the toaster noise, so he became scared of that. Eventually, he figured out the kettle turning and usually accompanied the bread bag noise, so he became scared of that. Now we have just reached the point that he has figured out the time of day we go into the kitchen to turn on the kettle and open the bread bag, so he has scheduled his fear to that. I'm always blown away how he has been able to figure all this out. Not sure if it is really that smart, but it impresses me. To clarify, the smoke alarm has only actually gone off once or twice, but he remembers it well. We're also training him with treats to not be scared. He's also a Chihuahua cross, so being scared of noises is kind of his thing. You'd be surprised how much dogs' lives revolve around your routine. As soon as my alarm goes off every morning, my dog sits in front of the door waiting for his walk, and if I snooze it one too many times, he takes it upon himself to be my alarm by getting in my bed and putting his face next to mine. No matter where he is in the house, he can hear me put my shoes on, and he knows that it's something I do every time before a walk or a trip to the dog park. So he always comes downstairs and sits in front of me while intently staring at me. He knows that if I wake up and don't get ready for work, that it's the weekend, or whatever he calls it, and is more excited than when it's a weekday. Magnificent creatures. Hi, you don't seem to know what time it is. It's walkies time. Story 13. My dog has pooped on the floor and casually placed my husband's underwear over it. Stolen the cat treats bag and hid it behind the entertainment center, has been the only dog to break out of his boarding kennel, find his own bag, and walk around the front waiting for a walk. He's an a-hole, but such a sweet baby. Story 14. I have rats. 6 boys in one cage, 4 girls in another, and a solo boy in his own separate cage. Solo boy has behavioral issues, so he can't be homed with anything but himself. I've tried everything from getting him snipped to going ridiculously slow with introductions. Nothing. He goes for the kill with everything, myself included. My partner was the one who found this out. Loki, the a-hole in question, was able to open his cage door by putting all his weight on it, free-roaming our apartment to do God knows what, then just goes back into his cage whenever he's done. You're probably asking how he closes the door, preventing us from noticing him escaping, right? Well, I had a chew toy in the door for him, and this smart a-hole literally just pulls on the damn chew toy. I wouldn't have known he was getting out if it had not been for my partner waking up in the middle of the night to use the washroom. Smartest little sob I've ever met. F you, Loki. I now know it's you who's been destroying my furniture, and the reason why I won't get my damaged deposit back. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. Teachers, what student was so smart it's scary? Story 1 would make you question how smart you are. See you in that video.